my next guest. Her name is Sibel Edmonds.
We turn now to Sibel Edmonds.
You're talking about money laundering?
You used the word treat.
The State Department asked the Bureau not to investigate it. American people have the right to know this.
I'm sorry, but the word Israel is just screaming on the inside of me. The nuclear and the drugs is a global game. You have to look at the connection.
Sibel Edmonds, born to a Turkish family in Iran, spent 6 months as a translator for the FBI. It put her at the heart of a major intelligence scandal. In June 2002, the scandal broke in the Washington Post. Sibel and a colleague, John Cole, alleged that spies had infiltrated the FBI Language Services section. It all started the previous year. One morning in September 2001.
I never planned to be a language specialist. This was not what I was planning.
Not go down the ground. You will get trapped.
4 days after September 11, I got this phone call, and they said they really needed my services, and they had completed the background check. And when could I start? There were all these documents, there were all these audio tapes that needed to be translated. There were all these people who had been detained, and they needed to interrogate them. And most of these people didn't speak English.
Our first effort is to identify any associates related to the hijackers.
Victory will come over time.
Responded immediately.
And at that point, the chaos of that time period with September 11, and it was, how could you say no? When I got there, I had no idea what exactly I was going to do for them. See, this department, this language division in the FBI, is considered the highest security unit in the FBI.
Sibel Edmonds lived in Istanbul and Tehran to the age of 18. She speaks Turkish, Farsi, and Azeri. The FBI recruited her to translate wiretaps in Turkish that it had recorded inside the United States. The targets were suspected of espionage or of having links with terrorist organizations. By December 2001, Sibel had been working at the FBI for 2 months. Then, one Sunday morning, she and her husband Matthew got a call that would turn their lives upside down.
Sibel had been working for the FBI about 2 months after the 9/11 occurrence. And one Sunday morning, we received a call. One of the other translators in the department where she worked in the FBI called up and said that she would like to come over and introduce her husband to us. We had never met her husband. My wife, of course, had met the other translator. Her name is Melik Jan Dickerson. Her husband's name was Douglas Dickerson.
I was seated here. Sibel was seated beside me. Melik Dickerson was seated in his chair here, and Douglas Dickerson was seated over here.
The husband did most of the talking. And he started out right away giving a background, telling us who he was. He had worked for the Air Force both in Turkey and in some of the Central Asian republics.
He described how they had met in Turkey, the fact that he had been in Turkey, the fact that he was in the arms procurement business. He worked for the government.
Liaison with various countries in the region, doing weapons procurement.
But fairly rapidly, he started to describe the fact that he had friends in the Turkish community.
He wanted to know whether or not we knew about some of the Turkish organizations. And I said that, well, I thought you need to have some sort of business relationship with Turkey or a reason to be a member of that organization. He at that point said,
"You, Sibel, all you have to do is tell them who you are and what you do, and you can be a member of that organization, and then you can retire with a very good life."
Sibel realized she had been approached by spies who had penetrated the FBI Language Services section.
And then we escorted them to the door and wished them good day. I didn't know at the time, had no idea that what had just taken place was going to have such a dramatic effect on our lives, and had such a devastating effect on Sibel.
How had Melick Dickerson infiltrated the Language Services section? And what was this mysterious organization the Dickersons were involved with?
Initially, I reported all the stuff to my supervisor in December 2001, and nothing happened. And actually, I was told to just hush it and not talk about it. So I reported to somebody in the mid-management. And then this retaliation started. You know, they were taking away my job assignments, and I would go on my computer, and I had real urgent documents that were requested by certain agents from certain field offices, and I couldn't bring them up on my computer. My computer was confiscated, and the attitudes toward me in that department by supervisor that I was working for. So I said, well, this is time for me to take it to the highest level, to the headquarters, and to Director Mueller and his assistant. And I did that. And that even backfired more.
For Robert Mueller, the director of the FBI, Sibel had become an embarrassment. The reprisals intensified. Sibel was taken to a building in Chinatown for a lie detector test.
Well, they asked me like things about security, whether or not I was approached by spies and to be recruited, which I said yes.
While Sibel's colleague, Melick Dickerson, was assigned to translate the Turkish wiretaps, some of which targeted her mysterious friends, Sibel's work came to an abrupt end.
It was March 22nd. Friday, about 4:20 p.m.
Sibel's allegations had made too many waves.
The person in charge of security division, a Sukum broker, said, well, I would like you to hand me your key to your cabinets and your badge. And I said, well, may I ask why? Based on what reason are you firing me? And this guy, Friel, said, you know why you're being fired? You're being fired because you reported these issues and you reported them to the headquarters, and we don't have to give you a darn reason why you're being fired. And at this point, he got up and he's like, now you're going to be escorted outside the building. At this point, 3 of them, they are escorting me downstairs. And on the way down, Thomas Friel told me, he said, we will be watching you, we will be listening to you. You cannot talk about any of these issues that you reported outside. You don't even have a right to go to any attorney.
Sibel was out of the FBI. But now everyone in the language division was talking about the Dickersons. The time had come for them to disappear. Douglas and Melick Dickerson flew to Europe, never to return. Disowned by the FBI, Sibel decided to turn to Congress. She arranged a meeting with Senators Patrick Leahy and Charles Grassley.
They started talking about whistleblower protection and how I would be covered. And I said, just wait a minute. I am not a whistleblower. I'm not blowing the whistle. And they said, no, you are a whistleblower. And I said, no, I'm not a whistleblower. It took me months and months until I just kind of resigned. I said, fine, I'm a whistleblower.
Sibel didn't stop there. She filed 2 claims, one for unfair dismissal and the other for breach of freedom of speech. The Department of Justice had no choice but to start an internal inquiry. Months went by. Seeing that the inquiry was leading nowhere and that Congress had failed to act, Sibel turned to the media.
We had wiretaps that were translated. Where do you think the truth lies? And that's what the American people need to learn about. I'm talking about those people who make decisions not to act on certain translations, certain intelligence pieces before 9/11 and after 9/11. They haven't mentioned anybody who actually is connected to Al-Qaeda in mid or higher level. And it's just Kafkaesque.
Sibel had gone too far for her former bosses. The FBI director handed the case over to the then Attorney General, John Ashcroft. Ashcroft's reaction was extreme.
On October 18, 2002, my 10th wedding anniversary, I was informed that the Attorney General, John Ashcroft, had invoked this rarely invoked privilege called the state secret privilege. Based on this privilege, everything that had to do with my case was considered top secret, classified, and a matter of national security, which requested the courts to put a stop in any process that dealt with my case, whether or not I was right or not.
State secrets privilege is an all-powerful political and legal weapon dating from the 1950s. In the wake of 9/11, it was a favorite of the Bush administration. Mueller and Ashcroft managed to block Sibel's lawsuits. The message was clear: keep quiet or go to jail. Gagged in the name of national security, Sibel said no more for 2 years.
It was like this awful, awful time. So I came to this point that nothing was going to happen. And during this time, they had just finished establishing the 9/11 Commission.
We must uncover every detail and learn every lesson of September the 11th.
Keen to unite the country at a time of conflict, the Bush administration agreed to a congressional commission of inquiry into September 11th. Its mandate included investigating shortcomings in U.S. intelligence agencies that had made the attacks possible.
This is the only hope we have, this 9/11 Commission report. They're going to say what's wrong. For example, with the FBI translation units, which a lot of things are wrong.
Behind closed doors, Sibel gave the commission her testimony, once again revealing all she knew. And the White House had just made its first mistake.
Condoleezza Rice had just come out and made the statement saying,
I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center.
To say that we had no specific information, that was an outrageous lie. And she's a national security advisor there. And all those people, they report to her, to say we didn't have it. So when we came out of one of the 9/11 Commission hearings, 9/11 family members, they just pointed at me and they said, you know, she's one of those people who was outraged with the recent statement by Condoleezza Rice. And suddenly all these cameras started flashing on my face. It's like, well, what do you think of this statement? And I said, well, that was an outrageous lie. And then for the first time, that made all the headlines.
Sibel Edmonds, can you repeat again the information that you have to substantiate?
And I gave an explanation. I said, she said we. We includes National Security Advisor, includes the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. That's what we means. And she said we.
Sibel's comments sowed the seeds of doubt in a nation yearning for truth. Condoleezza Rice was forced to backtrack on what she had said.
As I said to you in the private session, I probably should have said I could have not imagined, because within 2 days, people started to come to me and say, oh, but there were these reports in 1998 and 1999.
So that was the start of me outside, doing it outwardly, doing it more publicly, and doing it more visibly.
On the 24th of July, 2004, the 9/11 Commission released its report. America looked to it for the truth. But not one of the report's 567 pages made any reference to Sibel's claims.
Good morning. My name is Laurie Van Auken. On the morning of September 11th, my husband Kenneth was killed while at his office on the 105th floor of the North Tower at the World Trade Center. The 9/11 Commission